Hey, it's Ryan and welcome back to A to B's Books. Today I'll be starting a new reading vlog. I haven't actually really decided what books I'm going to read. In 8 minutes, I'm being picked up and we're going to go to Indigo for some book shopping. Me, my friend Courtney, and my friend Shannon. And then we're gonna go to dinner. So I think what my goal is to find a book at the bookstore just for like a palate cleanser because I'm just coming off of Slewfoot. So I want like a palate cleanser from that. And then I think the next physical book that I'll be going into on this vlog will be Bunny. I was hoping to get it done before like spooky season's over, but today is the 28th of October. So odds are I won't, but still fall vibes. So I'm gonna go for that. And I will be continuing Velvet Was the Night on audiobook, and depending on what's available through Libby, once I finish that, will determine what I end up picking up as my next audiobook. So come along with me for the journey of picking a new book, but also throughout the week. Terrible video. What happened? Hello, I'm back from dinner and Indigo, where I did get a new book. And it's very exciting. It's one that I had put on hold for an audiobook, and it is When the World Went Silent by Donna Jones Allward. Freya thinks it sounds super interesting. So it's a novel about the 1917 Halifax explosion, which is a huge explosion that occurred in Halifax in 1917. I feel like I'm writing like an essay and I need to fill the word count. But basically, it was a huge tragedy in Canadian history. We actually used to have these kind of like random TV commercials called Our Heritage Moments. And there was one where it was like, doo, 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 about the boat having explosives.
The train. What? People, get out of here! It's gonna blow up! Ignition ship on fire. Stop train. Please, God, answer.
Coleman, there's no time!
The train's coming in towards Pier 6. I've got to warn you.
Come on, Vince, come on!
There are 700 people aboard it. I've got to stop it! Come on, acknowledge!
Halifax was devastated. 9,000 wounded, 2,000 dead, including Vince Coleman, dispatcher.
Anyways, it's something in our history that I want to learn more about. So I thought this would be a great way to do that. And in that last clip, right before this one, you would have seen me opening like a little kitty cat thing. And that is supposed to be a good luck charm for my bingo because I have really shitty luck. So maybe it'll turn around. We'll find out on Wednesday. This is going to be my next read. I'm going to start tonight, actually. Maybe just get a few chapters in and see how I like it. I'm much looking forward to it, to be honest. The only thing is, we were having a debate about this. Do you like pocket paperbacks? Like the pocket trade paperback, I think that's how you say it. Because this book is like humongo. I think it's too big. But my friends are saying they don't like the really small, chunky paperbacks. But I really like those. Those are like the books of when I was a teen, I feel. Like all my books came like that. So yeah, I guess maybe I just have something nostalgic about them. So what is your preferred method of book? I'm curious. I'm gonna shower, get ready for bed, and tuck into this book. Back. Right. Oh, God. Did you have fun? This afternoon, I'm going to be working on a craft for my TBR. I printed out all of the books that I have physically but haven't read. I think it totaled near 60 books. So I'm going to cut these up and fold them into this so that I can use this as like a way to help me kind of make a game out of all of the books that I own but have not read. So that's what I'll be doing this afternoon for a little bit. Lots of snip, snip, snip. It is done. I honestly thought it would be like full. This is kind of underwhelming, but it'll do the job. So TBR jar done. Hello, welcome to today. Today's been crazy, and right now I'll show you where I'm at and what I'm up to. I've just made my very first bracelet, and it's for my niece, and I'm gonna give it to her tomorrow, and it says, "Will you go to Eras with me?" Because your girl got Taylor Swift tickets with 10 days to spare. I'm dead. So I bought this book November of 2023, last year, with the intention of this being how I tell her we're going to the Eras tour. I thought I'd put the tickets in it. Because I told her we're going, no ifs, ands, or buts. But tickets were impossible to get and really, really dumb expensive on resale. So they ended up releasing new tickets today, and I was very fortunate and I was able to snag 2. So tomorrow I'm gonna go and drop off this little gift and see if she'll go to the Eras tour with me. I think I know what the answer is going to be. So yeah, I'm like beyond excited. Like I have been buzzing all day. I got the tickets at like just before 4 p.m. It is now 7:33 and I'm still like riding the high of the fact that I got tickets. Like, and I got them like through Ticketmaster, even though I hate Ticketmaster. So I went and got this kit so I can make tons of bracelets. So I have a few days to do bracelets. When this goes up, we'll know the results and either we'll be sad or happy, who knows. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm about to wrap this now. I finished When the World Fell Silent, and I have a 5-star read this year. That's my first 5-star read. I cried so much. It is a sad book. I think a normal person wouldn't cry as much as I did. I just cry like a tremendous amount, like always. I'm always crying. Just how like movies, TVs, and all that, like media makes me cry, I guess. So like a normal person wouldn't cry, I don't think. So don't be like afraid to pick up this book because you're going to cry. It's just sad, but I really enjoyed it. I don't think it's actually like a perfect book, but I do think that the reason I gave the 5 stars is right from the get-go, you're very emotionally attached to these 2 women and you have a vested interest. I also think, like, if you read the synopsis, you know what's going to happen. There's going to be this huge explosion, and I at least knew that 2,000 people die, 9,000 people get injured. So you know it's a great tragedy. With that knowledge, you're always like a little on the edge of your seat. The author has the explosion happen really early. So that actually felt refreshing, that I'm not, you know, reading, and then we're building up to this catastrophic event. It's more that we genuinely were there in the aftermath and years after for the rebuilding of the town and these people's lives. There's so much tragedy, but there's also a lot of hope. The characters, both of them, were strong in their own ways, honestly. And I just love, you know, strong women. So I'm going to, you know, root for that. I also think like this is the first book where I would give myself like, okay, I'm going to go to bed after this chapter. But like I had to keep reading after that chapter. That's been pretty rare for me recently. So for all of those reasons, that's why I rated it a 5-star. But I can acknowledge that it isn't a perfect book, but for me, like emotionally, it just like hit, you know? Hello. So I finished Velvet Was the Night and I ended up rating it like 3 stars. Yeah, I ended up rating it 3 stars. It started off really strong and I was super into it. And then it just kind of plateaued for me. The mystery or thriller aspect of it kind of was all for nothing. They even, I would have highlighted it, but it was audiobook, so I don't really know how to do that. There is a line in the book where they even like kind of say like the mystery or like the girl who lived across the hallway from her in her apartment building and her like missing status was all kind of anticlimactic, and that's exactly how I felt. And then on top of that, I found Maite to be unlikable or frustrating. There were certain aspects of her personality that I could relate to and her interests, but then there were other things about her where I just was like, you're a horrible person. In one way, I do think that is good writing because, you know, no one's all good and all bad. We're all like flawed individuals in some way. So it's realistic, but I just was like, I don't like you. I don't like want to be around you. But then Elvis, I liked him like the whole way through. And even though like the negative qualities about Elvis are that he was like criminal adjacent, but at the same time, like I don't really blame him because like due to his circumstances growing up, that's really one of the only opportunities he really had. And he really had like a strong love for learning. Like I do believe he could do good. And it's not like he's inherently a bad person because he's, you know, a bit of a criminal. It's just that that's one of the only opportunities for him to survive at that time in his life. So they were both like flawed characters. Like I do think it's good when a writer can make you feel either really good or really bad about something. It means that there's like something in that character that's hitting me with something. It's not that the writing was bad, but I just felt like the story itself just kind of fizzled out for me and I lost interest. But I'm glad I read it. And I definitely will read more from this author. It's not like I'm writing her off because I didn't like enjoy the rest of the book. It just like wasn't my favorite. It was a pretty mid book, but I'm disappointed only because I was feeling it for probably like the first 50%. But then when I realized like nothing was really going to come of the mystery or just like nothing progressed beyond like what I was expecting, I was just like, okay, whatever. So yeah, I've only really read Velvet Was the Night and When the World Fell Silent, and then a little bit of Spy X Family. I think I got like 1.5 volumes done. So not like a crazy reading week for me, but I did have a 5-star read. And I realized that like I just gobbled up When the World Fell Silent. So I was like, oh, I literally realized in this vlog, I said I was reading it and then all of a sudden I was done. So I apologize. There was no in-between thoughts and feelings, just me adoring it. But speaking of When the World Fell Silent, I did like a little bit of independent research on the Halifax explosion. So I thought I could do like a little history mini dive. And if you have absolutely no interest in that, thank you for watching the video. This is the end of it, and I hope to see you in my next one. But for those who are interested, let me give you, my best Bailey Sarian dark history impression, but without the, well, I guess it's dark history, but it's not the type of dark history she does. It's not dark because of the same reasons. Halifax is in the Canadian province of Nova Scotia on the East Coast. And in 1917, which is when the book takes place and when the explosion happens, Halifax was a really booming city because it is a port city. And at the time, there was obviously a war on, and Halifax had always thrived during wartime because the Canadian government had begun like a very specific and costly effort to develop the harbor and waterfront facilities during World War I. Oh, sorry, just before World War I. And so the outbreak of the war brought Halifax back to prominence, and the population ended up growing to 65,000 people in 1917. Based on where Halifax was located, it was a perfect place for boats from ally countries to meet up and form a convoy, because the German U-boats were so good at attacking the crossing ships that the Allies actually ended up creating a convoy system protected with British cruisers and destroyers. So Halifax was one of the ports where they were able to meet up so that they could convoy over as safely as possible without losing supplies and obviously troops. On December 6, 1917, two boats ended up colliding in the Narrows, which is like a channel in Halifax. And it was the SS Imo from Norway and the SS Mont Blanc from France. The French vessel was loaded with munitions and explosives, but the information wasn't actually known to that many people because they were trying to keep it hush-hush so that it could kind of protect valuable information. The two boats collided at 8:45 a.m. and a fire ended up breaking out on the boats. This ended up drawing a crowd because it was kind of like a spectacle, and they didn't know what was on the boat, so they just thought a fire broke out on a boat and it would be put out, or unfortunately there would be a loss of the boat. But people were like able to jump. The people on the boats were able to abandon ship and like get out safely. Well, not actually. And then people were also looking out at the burning boat from their windows all around the city into the piers. And at 9:04 a.m. is when the explosion occurred. The blast radius for the explosion was about half a mile and destroyed the area of Richmond. 2,000 people lost their lives and 9,000 people were injured. The damages are estimated to be about $696 million in today's money. The death toll could have been worse, but earlier in the vlog, I showed you that little clip where Patrick Vincent Coleman, an intercolonial railway dispatcher, he ended up getting a message through to stop a train that was about to come in. So he ended up saving many, many lives, but he did lose his life, sadly. That story is kind of all I remembered from growing up because it played as a commercial in between all our shows like all summer long. And apparently the message that he said was, "Hold up the train, ammunition ship afire in harbor, making for Pier 6 and will explode. Guess this will be my last message. Goodbye, boys." That is one theory as to what he wrote, but there are a couple varying alternatives of kind of something around those long lines as to what he wrote. So after the explosion, the initial rescue efforts were actually done just by neighbors and family until rescue workers from around the area were able to get in and offer like their expertise and help out. By 10 a.m., so only an hour basically after, there were already trains coming in with supplies and volunteers to help the city of Halifax in their recovery efforts. So these trains were coming from Atlantic Canada and the eastern US. Unfortunately, literally the very next day, Halifax was hit with a huge snowstorm. So it was like 50 centimeters of snow, and it ended up like crippling the rescue efforts because everything, not only was there like so much debris everywhere, but then that debris was getting covered by snow and the train tracks were blown out. So then all the trains that were coming up or in to the city actually stopped like way outside the city, and everything had to be walked in on foot because the train tracks were just demolished, so they couldn't actually get it into the city. It had to all be done by foot. So like I had mentioned earlier, a lot of people ended up watching the fire on the boats from their windows in their homes, and because of this, a lot of eye injuries ended up occurring. Many people were blinded or partially blinded. People lost their eyes, and this actually prompted, I'm just going to read the quote, "The many eye injuries resulting from the disaster led to better understanding of how to care for damaged eyes, and with the recently formed Canadian National Institute for the Blind, Halifax became internationally known as a center for care for the blind." And that is a quote from Professor Victoria Allen from Dalhousie University. Just briefly, I do want to touch on two communities that were not given any funding or supplies, and that was the Black community of Africville and the indigenous Mi'kmaq settlement. Both were in close proximity to the blast. I'm gonna read the quote exactly from Wikipedia just so I don't mess anything up. The Black community of Africville was spared the direct force of the blast by the shadow effect of the raised ground to the south. However, Africville's small and frail homes were heavily damaged by the explosion. Families reported the deaths of 5 residents. A combination of persistent racism and a growing conviction that Africville should be demolished to make way for industrial development resulted in the people of Africville receiving no police or fire protection. They had to make do without water mains and sewer lines, despite paying city taxes. The Mi'kmaq settlement, which is an indigenous group, in the years and months preceding the explosion, the Department of Indian Affairs had been actively trying to force the Mi'kmaq to give up their land and move to a reserve, but this had not occurred by the time of the explosion. Turtle Grove was close to the center of the blast, and the physical structures of the settlement were obliterated by the explosion and then the preceding tsunami, which, yeah, a tsunami happened afterwards. So they were dealing with like so much at this time. The tsunami was a direct result of the explosion. So a precise Mi'kmaq death toll is unknown, as the Department of Indian Affairs and census records for the community were incomplete. 9 bodies were recovered from Turtle Grove, and there were 11 known survivors. The Halifax Remembrance Book lists 16 members of the Tufts Cove community as dead. Not all of the dead listed as in Turtle Cove were indigenous. The Turtle Cove settlement was not rebuilt in the wake of the disaster. Survivors were housed in racially segregated building under generally poor conditions, and most were eventually dispersed around Nova Scotia. I just wanted to briefly mention those 2 communities since they're not always represented in history books. But yeah, I wanted to bring that up since they were both underfunded and basically ignored by the people who should be helping them. To end on a brighter note of this tragedy, in 1918, Halifax sent a Christmas tree to Boston in thanks and remembrance for the help that the Boston Red Cross and the Massachusetts Public Safety Committee provided immediately after the disaster. The gift was then revived in 1971 and began an annual donation of a large tree to promote Christmas tree exports, as well as acknowledge Boston's support after the explosion. So every year, Nova Scotia gives Boston a great big Christmas tree as a thank you for all the help during the crisis. So yeah, that's a little history as to what the heck this whole explosion is about. If you stuck along all this way, let me know if you enjoyed the little mini history lesson. And if you want to watch the whole video of the Our Heritage moment, it's literally 1 minute long. I'll have it linked in the comments below because I can't link things in my description box yet. This vlog was kind of all over the place. I realized I didn't do enough kind of check-ins of books, so I do apologize for that. And in the next one, I plan on consciously making an effort to do so. I hope that you've had a great day, a great evening, a great morning, wherever you may be, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.